Typefaces aren't merely about forms, they're about design systems. They have to do with the way things relate to one another.
It's the joy of what happens with color and form and information.
Fonts are clothes in a sense. They help visually externalize your identity to the world.
It's about tension, it's about spatial arrangement, it's about the texture, and it's about the dynamics.
Typefaces are not toys. They're tools. They're designed to solve problems. Some people say that there are two kinds of type designers. There are those whose voice is always detectable in the work they do, and those whose voice is never detectable in the work they do. Tobias and I try to conceal our handiwork in typefaces. I would love people to recognize our work, to respond to it in its emotional way, but again, for it to play second fiddle to the message.
A lot of the conversations that we have would sound kind of bizarre. We're trying to figure out, like, what is the gray flannel suit version of this form?
Or it's like, this is too Tom and Jerry. It needs to be more Don Draper. It's
like, and we know exactly what we're talking about. It's like, oh yeah, you're right.
Letters are everywhere, and that's one of the things that makes typography so interesting to people these days.
It's such a pervasive part of our day. You need type again and again and again to get through the day, to live your life.
I landed in the music industry in the 70s. It was completely lucky. I loved record covers. I thought there was no object more wonderful than a record cover. The albums that people would know were things like Bruce Springsteen, Darkness at the Edge of Town, or the Boston album. But I was more interested in typography. So I used to experiment with typography on jazz albums. I determine how I design something based on the audience and what the audience will bear. Evoke the response you want while pushing the audience to see something perhaps in a new way. My goal when I started designing for the Public Theater was to create a visual language as opposed to a logo for a theater. And Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk was the best use of that visual language because it used this wood type in a very provocative way. It was type that talked to you, it was type that rapped, it was type that tapped. It's the only Broadway show that didn't have a logo. Everything is about identity. Everything is about expressing individuality of places, businesses, organizations, people. I think the ultimate goal is to have as much uniqueness and understanding in every communication that you can have.
Quite weirdly, I always think typography is a little bit like a carpet. I kind of look at it from the point of view of texture and how readable that texture actually is. One of our clients is Studio Museum in Harlem. I had thought about Invisible Man. He talks about the sense of identity as an African American and being black, the idea of being noticed and unnoticed. What we did was create a form similar to a stealth bomber. I took some text and I applied it to a paper format, utilizing optical illusion, and that's how stealth became whole. It's not a normal poster which is flat. It's very sculptural. UCLA came to me and asked us to look at their poster series. We utilized a standard font and we used Fedora and manipulated them through code into irregular, dynamic structures which were still fonts. You need attractors. Too much text. There's not enough textual form and tension and dynamics. And so when you see a poster that is entirely different to other posters that you see around you, then you're going to be attracted to it, either whether you hate it or you like it. And it's basically doing its job.
If you look back 200 years, infographics were being used to map cholera cases in London. Fast forward, you have magazines like Wired putting an emphasis on infographics. Wired influences publications like Good, who take this online. So the Opportunity Gap is a piece that we did for Good magazine. It's really ultimately about education. It's about how poverty rates and access to healthcare creates a discrepancy in the opportunities available to students of different races. The most challenging part of working on an infographic is taking all of the available data and deciding what is the most important bit of information that we need to communicate. Infographics are just about the typography getting out of the way of the message.
Our process is to be able to distill the information to a very key point You try to be as expressive as you can possibly be with the limitations you have.
Infographics are like top science. It's fun,
and friendly.
It's interesting, it's absorbing.
Because of the computer, people are really aware of typography like they've never been before.
Typography is kind of finally free on the web.
It's amazing that everybody can do this. The tools are there. They're on your phone, which is extraordinary.
It's just something that should be enjoyed.
Words have meaning and type has spirit, and the combination is spectacular.